Where does the beef come from? Obviously beef comes from cows, but not these kinds of cows. The cows that they use for beef are in far worse condition. From the moment that they reach the feedlots, the cattle raised to be slaughtered are mistreated. They are injected and force-fed. They are beaten and crowded during transport. And once they get to the slaughterhouse, they suffer until they finally meet their end. At between 6 to 12 months of age, the cattle are transported to the feedlots. But some don't even make the trip. The rest are crammed together in overfed grain. They eat 1,000 pounds of grain each month. It's not natural for cattle to eat grain. They become extremely sick because of the grain consumption. Grain creates a foam inside of the cattle, which causes gas bubbles to form in their first stomach or rumen. Essentially, the cattle cannot release their gas, which can result in other severe problems. The buildup compresses their lungs and makes it hard for them to breathe. The liver abscesses cause their blood flow to stop, which could result in death for the animal. The grain also causes an increase in stomach acid, which causes ulcers to form. These ulcers cause a condition where bloody fluid rushes into the rumen called acute acidosis. Acute acidosis is often fatal. Another problem on the feedlot is with thousands of cattle, the amount of waste becomes an issue. The ammonia in the air causes chronic respiratory problems for the cattle. It literally hurts them to breathe. Aside from all the ammonia, the amount of dust also causes problems for the cattle. They start to develop dust pneumonia, which causes the immune system to kick into action and keeps it running on a constant basis. Since the conditions cause so many problems for them, the cattle are dosed with antibiotics to keep them going. They are sick and suffering, and yet their pain still continues. The cattle are then loaded into the trucks, where they are totally crammed together. It is important that the cattle have space to move around. They are not even given food or water for the entire time. It is very common for the cattle to become blinded during their journey just because another steer moved its head. Their horns can also get broken. If the slaughterhouse is a short distance away, the cattle are required to run with chili powder in their eyes, just so they don't stop. Obviously, all things need water, food, and shelter from the elements. During travel, the cattle have no such luxuries. Oftentimes, the cattle are found frozen to the bars of the trucks or suffer from heat stroke because of high temperatures. To make it worse, the drivers make sharp turns so the cattle topple over each other. Finally, the cattle reach their destination point. Some of the cattle, however, did not make the trip. Beaten and sick, the cattle finally make it inside the slaughterhouse. Their first stop is to meet the knocker. The man's job is to stun them in the head with a steel bolt to render them unconscious. It seems humane enough, but it doesn't always work. It is common for the cattle to still be alive for the majority of the process. After they are supposedly rendered unconscious, they are hooked to a chain and suspended in the air. Their next step is to have their carotid artery cut. Sometimes these animals are fully conscious and suffering. That is the most common way for cattle to be terminated. There are other methods that are a lot less humane. Sometimes their heads are buried in the ground until they suffocate. Another method is to take a steel rod and pierce the steer straight through, starting from the mouth. Although the slaughterhouse business is booming, it is obviously not the best method. There are small ranchers that give the cattle the humane treatment that they deserve. On these ranches, they only take care of 150 cattle at the most. The cattle are grass-fed and given veterinary services when needed. When it comes time to serve their purpose, the ranchers make the cattle feel comfortable. They will walk up to the cattle in the field and shoot them once in the head. It doesn't have to be such a gruesome process. The cattle can live happy lives until their very last day.